Hello students, let's try to understand about the respiration student. So if you talk about the respiration, so dear students, we have discussed nutrition in organism in the last sections. The food material taken in during the process of nutrition is used in cell to provide energy for various life process. Diverse organisms do this in different ways. Some use oxygen to break down glucose completely into carbon dioxide and water. Some use other pathways that do not involve oxygen. In all cases, the first step is the breakdown of the glucose, a 6 carbon molecule into 3 carbon molecule called pyruvate. This process takes place in the cytoplasm. Further, the pyruvate may be converted into ethanol and carbon dioxide. This process takes place in yeast during the fermentation. Since this process takes place in the absence of air, it is called anaerobic respiration. Breakdown of pyruvate using oxygen takes place in the mitochondria. This process breaks up the 3 carbon pyruvate molecules to give 3 molecules of the carbon dioxide. The other product is water. Since this process takes place in presence of air, it is called the aerobic respiration. The release of energy in this aerobic process is lot greater than the anaerobic process. Sometimes when there is the lack of oxygen in our muscle cells, another pathway for the breakdown of the pyruvate is taken. Here the pyruvate is converted into lactic acid, which is also 3 carbon molecule. This build up the lactic acid in our muscle during the sudden activities causes cramp. So glucose in cytoplasm, it is going to give student pyruvate 3 carbon molecule. Now in absence of oxygen in yeast, it is giving ethanol, CO2 and energy student 2 carbon molecule, and it is giving 2 ATP, adenosine triphosphate. Lack of oxygen in muscles, if you are lactic acid and energy 3 carbon molecule, and presence of oxygen in mitochondria, carbon dioxide, water, it is 38 ATP it is giving a student. The energy released during the cellular respiration is immediately used to synthesize a molecule called ATP, which is used to fuel all other activities in the cell. In this process, it is broken down, giving rise to a fixed amount of energy which can be derived to the endothermic reactions taking place in the cell. Since the aerobic respiration pathway depend on oxygen, aerobic organism need to ensure that there is sufficient intake of oxygen. We have seen that the plant exchanges gases through the stomata, and the large intercellular space ensure that all cells are in contact with air. Carbon dioxide, oxygen, and are exchanged by the diffusion here. They go into cell or away from them and out into air. The direction of diffusion depends upon the environmental conditions and the requirement of the plant. At night, when there is no photosynthesis occurring, CO2 eliminated in the major exchange activities during the day. CO2 generated during respiration used up for photosynthesis. Hence, there is no CO2 release instead of oxygen released in the major event this time. Animals have evolved different organs for the uptake of oxygen from the environment and for getting rid of the carbon dioxide produced. Terrestrial animal can breathe the oxygen in atmosphere, but animal that live in water need to use the oxygen dissolved in water. Since the amount of dissolved oxygen is fairly low compared to the amount of oxygen in air, the rate of breathing in aquatic animals organism is much faster than that seen in terrestrial organism. Fishes takes in water through their mouth and force it past the gill where the dissolved oxygen is taken up by the blood. Terrestrial organism uses oxygen in atmosphere for the respiration. This oxygen is absorbed by the different organs in the different animal. All these organs have structures that increases the surface area which is in contact with the oxygen rich atmosphere. This is the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide has to take place across the surface. This surface is very fine and delicate. In order to protect this surface, it is usually placed within the body. So there have to be passes that will take air to this area. In addition, there is a mechanism for moving the air in and out this area where oxygen is absorbed. In human being, air is taken into the body through the nostril. The air passing through the nostril is fitted by the fine air that line the passes. The passage is also lined with the muscle mucus which help in the process from here. The air passes through the throat and into the lungs. Rings of cartilage are present in throat. These ensure that the air passes does not collapse. Within the lungs, the passage evident divided into the smaller tubes, which finally terminate in balloon-like structures, which are called alveoli, singular alveolus. The alveoli provide a surface where the exchange of gases can take place. The wall of the alveoli contain an extensive network blood vessels, as we have seen in earlier year. When we breathe in, we fit our ribs and flatten our diaphragm, and the chest cavity become larger. As a result, because of this, air is sucked into the lungs and filled the expanded alveoli. The blood bring the carbon dioxide from the rest of the body for release into the alveoli, and the oxygen in the alveolar air is taken up by the blood in the alveolar blood vessels to the transported to all the cells in body. During the breathing cycle, when air is taken in and let out, the lungs always contain residual volume of the air, so that there is sufficient time for oxygen to be absorbed and for the carbon dioxide to be released. When the body size of the animal is large, the diffusion pressure alone cannot take care of the oxygen delivery to the part of the body. Instead, respiratory pigment take up oxygen from the air in the lungs and carry it to tissue which are deficient in oxygen before the releasing it. In human being, the respiratory pigment is hemoglobin, which has very high affinity for oxygen. This pigment is present in the red blood corpuscle. Carbon dioxide is more soluble in water than oxygen is, and hence mostly transported in the dissolved form of the blood. So this is what is our answer, student. Thank you so much for watching.